Gosling is actually Danny Ketch. Marvel just confirmed Ryan Gosling as Ghost Rider, but they still haven't told us which Ghost Rider he's playing, and that detail could completely change what this movie is actually about. Because most people hear Ghost Rider and immediately think Johnny Blaze. He's the version who made the deal with the devil, became the spirit of vengeance, and turned a motorcycle into one of Marvel's most recognizable images. But Marvel has never had just one Ghost Rider, and Danny Ketch might be the version Marvel has been quietly preparing us for. In the comics, Danny isn't simply another guy who inherits the curse. His entire history is tied to something much older. Marvel's own character history reveals that the spirit of vengeance inside Danny is connected to noble Kale, an ancestor whose story reaches back through the Kale family bloodline. Danny eventually discovers that he is related to Jennifer Kale, and that his Ghost Rider identity is part of a family curse that has been passed down through generations. That means Danny's transformation isn't random. It is the latest chapter of an ancient supernatural story, and that creates a very different possibility for Gosling. What if Marvel isn't introducing Ghost Rider again? What if they're finally introducing the other Ghost Rider who was always supposed to be part of this mythology? Because Danny changes what the franchise can become. Johnny Blaze gives Marvel a story about a stuntman making a deal with Mephisto. Danny gives them a mystery involving bloodlines, Jennifer Kale, ancient spirits of vengeance, and a Ghost Rider identity that existed long before he understood what was happening to him. Even better, Marvel already has a reason to keep Danny's story connected to Johnny. Its own history reveals that Danny and Johnny are brothers, meaning Gosling could enter the MCU without erasing everything that came before. He could be another piece of the same supernatural family. So the question isn't whether Ryan Gosling looks like Johnny Blaze. It's whether Marvel deliberately left his identity unnamed because revealing Danny Ketch would expose the much bigger Ghost Rider mythology they're planning to build. According to YouTube, only 1% of you watching are subscribed. If you like content like this, please subscribe. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Ghost Rider is God's weapon. Everyone sees Ghost Rider and assumes the same thing: flaming skull, hellfire, demonic deal, Mephisto. He looks like something hell created to punish sinners, but Marvel eventually revealed something that completely destroys that interpretation. Ghost Rider may actually be one of heaven's weapons. For years, the spirits of vengeance were treated like demonic entities. Even Johnny Blaze's origin makes it look that way. But Marvel's own history reveals that the spirits of vengeance are actually described as God's enforcers, supernatural beings created to punish evil and act as heaven's black ops force. Their hellish appearance wasn't proof that they served hell. It was simply the form their power took. And that makes Ghost Rider's entire mythology look different. Because if the spirit inside the rider is fundamentally an agent of heaven, then the flames, chains, and terrifying skull aren't signs that he's becoming a demon. They're the weapon. Marvel even takes this further through the story of Zadkiel, an archangel who was originally responsible for the spirits of vengeance. He manipulates the Ghost Riders because he wants to steal their collective power and use it to take control of heaven itself. The Riders aren't just supernatural vigilantes caught in hell's affairs. Their power is important enough that an angel is willing to start a war over it. And this creates the real theory. What if Marvel's eventual Ghost Rider movie deliberately makes us believe he's another servant of hell, only to reveal that the thing everyone thought was demonic was actually divine? Marvel is building Midnight Suns. Marvel has spent years introducing characters who belong to the darkest corners of its universe. Doctor Strange opened the door to the supernatural. Wanda pushed it further. Then came Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night, and now Ghost Rider. But what if these characters aren't being introduced separately? What if Marvel is quietly rebuilding the Midnight Suns? In the comics, Ghost Rider and Doctor Strange were at the center of the original Midnight Suns, a supernatural team assembled to stop threats that ordinary heroes couldn't handle. The lineup eventually expanded to characters like Blade, Morbius, Moon Knight, and others who existed far outside the Avengers' usual world. Marvel still describes Ghost Rider and Doctor Strange as foundational members of the group. And that matters because the MCU already has pieces of this puzzle. Doctor Strange is established. Moon Knight exists. Werewolf by Night has already appeared. Blade has been developed as part of Marvel's Supernatural Corner. And now Marvel is bringing Ghost Rider back into live action with Ryan Gosling. Any one of those characters could exist independently, but put them together and the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Because Marvel doesn't need another Avengers team immediately after the multiverse saga. It could build an entirely different group around threats that the Avengers aren't equipped to handle. Demons, curses, ancient gods, dark magic, and whatever else exists on the other side of the MCU's supernatural world. And Ghost Rider is the character who makes that team make sense. He's not just another powerful hero. He's the connection between hell, magic, demons, and the human world. Once he enters the picture, characters like Strange, Blade, and Moon Knight suddenly stop feeling like disconnected experiments and start looking like pieces of the same corner of Marvel. And Marvel's comics are still actively revisiting the concept. Recent Moon Knight material has brought together characters including Moon Knight, Clea, Blade, and Ghost Rider around supernatural threats, showing that Marvel hasn't abandoned the idea of a modern supernatural team. So what if Ghost Rider's return isn't really about Ghost Rider? What if Marvel is using him as the final piece needed to assemble its supernatural Avengers? Because once the Avengers are dealing with the fate of the universe, Marvel may need another team for the threats that aren't coming from space. They're coming from hell. Agatha will create Ghost Rider. Everyone thinks Ghost Rider's origin starts with a deal with the devil. Johnny Blaze makes a bargain with Mephisto, loses control of his fate, and becomes the spirit of vengeance. But what if Marvel is preparing to completely rewrite that origin in the MCU, and the person who unlocks it has already appeared? Jennifer Kale. She may not look important yet, but in the comics, Jennifer is deeply connected to Ghost Rider's supernatural history. She discovers that she is a descendant of Noble Kale, one of the earliest spirits of vengeance, and a relative of both Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch. She even helps Doctor Strange treat Danny when his Ghost Rider identity becomes mystically unstable. Marvel describes Jennifer as one of the descendants of Noble Kale and explicitly connects her family to multiple Ghost Riders. And that changes the entire question surrounding the MCU. Because Agatha all along already placed Jennifer Kale inside Marvel's supernatural world. She isn't simply another witch. Her comic counterpart belongs to a bloodline that is literally intertwined with the origin of Ghost Rider. So what if Marvel didn't put Jennifer into the MCU just to expand Agatha's coven? What if she is the missing bridge between witches and the spirits of vengeance? In the comics, Noble Kale's story goes back centuries. His father made a bargain with Mephisto. Noble became a spirit of vengeance, and Mephisto eventually cursed Noble's bloodline so that the spirit could continue finding hosts among his descendants. That curse eventually reaches Naomi Kale, Johnny Blaze, Danny Ketch, and Jennifer herself. Now imagine Marvel adapting that differently. Instead of introducing Ghost Rider as another man who simply makes a deal with Mephisto, the MCU could reveal that the Kale bloodline was connected to the spirit of vengeance long before Johnny Blaze ever touched a motorcycle. And suddenly Mephisto's role changes too. He didn't necessarily create Ghost Rider. He may have only exploited something that already existed that would completely rewrite the mythology we've been assuming for decades, and Jennifer Kale could be the character who reveals it. Because if Marvel wants Ghost Rider to feel like part of the MCU's ancient supernatural history rather than another isolated hero, they already have the perfect doorway, and her name is Kale. Ghost Rider is going cosmic. Ghost Rider has always belonged to the darkest corner of Marvel. Hell, demons, curses, possessed motorcycles. His stories usually stay far away from the cosmic side of the universe. But Marvel has recently been doing something that could completely change where this character fits. They keep pushing Ghost Rider toward the stars. And the strangest example came in 2025, when Marvel published Ghost Rider vs. Galactus, putting Johnny Blaze directly against the Devourer of Worlds. This wasn't some alternate version of the character either. Marvel's own synopsis specifically identifies the Rider as Johnny Blaze, while Galactus roams the cosmos searching for planets to consume. But that story becomes much more interesting when you remember what Marvel already did with the character years earlier. In an alternate future, Frank Castle becomes Ghost Rider, and eventually Galactus makes him his herald, giving him the power cosmic. Marvel officially describes this version as Cosmic Ghost Rider, a character who goes from hell to serving Galactus and then gets pulled into conflicts involving Thanos and the fate of the universe. So Marvel has already tested something that sounds completely insane on paper. Ghost Rider crossing paths with Galactus, becoming involved in Thanos' story, and even stepping into conflicts that threaten the entire universe. And now they're doing it again with Johnny Blaze. That is where the theory begins. What if Marvel isn't simply making Ghost Rider stronger? What if they're deliberately changing the character's place in Marvel's hierarchy? Because if the spirit of vengeance can move from fighting demons to confronting Galactus, then Ghost Rider doesn't have to remain confined to the supernatural corner of the MCU. He could become the bridge between Marvel's mystical mythology and its cosmic one. And that would make the timing of Gosling's Ghost Rider movie far more interesting. Marvel doesn't have to choose between a supernatural Ghost Rider story and the enormous cosmic world surrounding the Avengers, Galactus, and whatever comes after the multiverse saga. It could connect them through Ghost Rider. The comics have already proven the character can survive that transition. So what if the MCU's biggest surprise isn't that Ghost Rider finally arrives? It's that Marvel is preparing to take him somewhere we've never seen him go before. Mephisto created his enemy. Mephisto has spent centuries making people desperate enough to trade their souls for what they want. But one of his oldest bargains may have produced the exact opposite of what he intended. Because when Mephisto turned Johnny Blaze into Ghost Rider, he didn't just create another servant of hell, he created his own enemy. Johnny never actually went looking for Ghost Rider. His deal was simple: save Crash Simpson from terminal cancer, and Mephisto could have Johnny's soul. The bargain technically worked. Crash was cured, but he later died in a motorcycle accident anyway. When Mephisto came to collect, Roxanne's intervention stopped him from taking Johnny's soul directly. So Mephisto retaliated by bonding Johnny with Zarathos and transforming him into Ghost Rider. Marvel itself describes this as the moment Mephisto's punishment created a new incarnation of the spirit of vengeance. And that's where Mephisto made his mistake, because Johnny didn't become the obedient demon Mephisto expected. He defied him. Instead of using his new power to serve hell, Johnny turned it against evil. Marvel specifically describes Johnny's choice to use his Ghost Rider powers for good as the reason he gained Mephisto as an enemy for all eternity. But the really crazy part is that this wasn't a one-time failure. Mephisto repeatedly tries to manipulate Ghost Rider. He has exploited Johnny's curse, interfered with other spirits of vengeance, and even became directly involved when Johnny eventually took the throne of hell himself. In Damnation, Mephisto's attempt to control the situation in Las Vegas ultimately ended with Johnny becoming the ruler of hell and helping trap Mephisto. So Mephisto's original plan essentially created a chain reaction he could never fully control. He wanted Johnny's soul. He gave Johnny the power to punish evil. He expected a victim. He created an enemy who would eventually invade his kingdom, oppose his schemes, and even take his throne. And if Marvel brings Mephisto's MCU story deeper into the Ghost Rider mythology, this becomes much more interesting than another hero versus villain fight. Because what if the biggest mistake Mephisto ever made wasn't making a deal with Johnny Blaze? What if it was giving his worst enemy the power to come after him?